Hi there, gorgeous, and a very happy Frugal Friday to you. If you are new to the channel, welcome. I make videos like this every Friday, focusing on drugstore products. I also make videos on Mondays and Wednesdays, so please subscribe if you'd like to be notified of new videos in the future, and I thank you in advance. Today I'm showing you some dupes for some of the most popular makeup products from Charlotte Tilbury, and a lot of these have been very highly requested by many of you. I will tell you up front, Charlotte Tilbury is one of the most difficult high-end brands I have ever duped on this channel. So this was a rather challenging video to not only research behind the scenes, but to put together and show you here. So some of these may not match exactly, but they're so close that you really can't tell from one side of my face to the next. And just to show you what I mean, one side of my face uses Charlotte Tilbury and the other side has the drugstore dupes. So can you tell me which side is which? If you guessed that this side of my face uses the Charlotte Tilbury makeup products, then you are right. And obviously the other side uses the drugstore dupes. So I'll show you everything that I used to create that look up close today with swatches so you can see the similarities that exist between these. And if you've been eyeing one of these popular sellers from Charlotte Tilbury, you won't have to shell out an arm and a leg to get it. First makeup product I have to dupe for you in this video is the Pillow Talk Eyeshadow Quad. This is probably the most requested product for me to dupe, and I was able to find some excellent matches for you within ColourPop's and MakeupGeek's single eyeshadow pans. The first eyeshadow in this palette, number 1, is called Prime, and you can find a dupe for it within ColourPop's line in the shade Ringer. The way that Charlotte Tilbury applies this shade initially in the look is all over the eye to give it a glistening sheen, and if you do that with the ColourPop eyeshadow, you get the same exact look. You do have to use a lighter hand with it because it is much more pigmented compared to the Charlotte Tilbury eyeshadow, but you get the same results with it. For the enhanced shade in the Charlotte Tilbury Quad, the dupe that I was able to find comes from ColourPop, and that is in Labyrinth. These two are almost next to near identical. You really can't tell them apart. I would say that ColourPop's version is a little warmer by comparison to Charlotte Tilbury's, but not by much. And once you get them on the eyes, side by side, it really is hard to detect a difference. And if you've never experienced any of the ColourPop formulas, they are extremely smooth, easy to blend, so pigmented that they are highly comparable to the kind of quality that you would get within the Charlotte Tilbury Quad. The next eyeshadow in this quad is the one called Smoke, number 3, and that one can be found in MakeupGeek's eyeshadow line with the shade Frappe. No real difference between these two shades, and again, once you get them on the eyes, it is very hard to detect any difference between the two. Alternatively, I was able to find a dupe for that same Smoke eyeshadow in a Profusion palette that I had. If you have this palette called Bare Eyes, there's an eyeshadow in here called Zing that is an exact match to the Charlotte Tilbury Smoke shade. And additionally, Profusion duplicated this same eyeshadow in their Naturals palette, which is much bigger by comparison, but it is also called Zing, and again, it is a match for that smoke color that you can find in the quad. Like I mentioned, the only eyeshadow I was not able to find a dupe for within the Pillow Talk Quad is the Pop shade at the bottom of the palette. Reason being is because it's very unique both in color and formula. It's a finely milled glitter that is pure gold in color, and I did not find anything like that within my collection. I got very close with one of the NYX glitter quads, but the gold color was not as pure of a gold as what you can find within the Charlotte Tilbury Quad. So my recommendation would be, if you can find an eyeshadow that is basically glitter, gold in color, more of a pure gold, that would be the closest best bet to replicating a look exactly that you might have seen using the Charlotte Tilbury Quad. But I personally don't feel like that's the shade that people go for in this palette. I feel like they're more looking for that light pink and the brown, because these are really unique and really beautiful shades and extremely hard to dupe, let me tell you. The next dupe I have to share with you is for Charlotte Tilbury's Brow Lift 3-Way Shape Tool eyebrow pencil, and the shade that I used is Grace K. Now I was able to find a semi-dupe for it from Forever 21 with their brow pencil. No name on it, no way to reference it unfortunately. The only thing I can tell you is that it is in the shade Taupe. And when you look at these, not only side by side in the applicator and how they look in the packaging, they're identical in that respect, but they also apply very similarly. They are both extremely creamy, very pigmented, and smooth on the skin, and they look extremely similar side by side. There is a very subtle difference between the Charlotte Tilbury brow and the Forever 21 brow, but it's just so slight that honestly, if you were going to use the Forever 21 pencil in place of the Charlotte Tilbury, really no one would be able to tell the difference. And that's why I feel like it is one of the most excellent dupes I have found for that Charlotte Tilbury brow pencil. One of the other really popular products that Charlotte Tilbury sells is her Wonderglow Instant Soft Focus Face Illuminator. And this is something that you apply before your foundation. It's basically a dewy primer that's supposed to give a lustrous look to the skin. And you can find an excellent dupe for it in the drugstore from No. 7's line with their Skin Illuminator. When swatched side by side, there is a noticeable color difference between the two. With Charlotte Tilbury's, you get more of a tan appearance, and No. 7's is a little bit more pink by comparison. But by the time you blend them out into the skin, you really cannot tell a difference between the two, and they both have the same illuminating effect on the skin. It's quite beautiful if you have the right skin type for it. Would not recommend this for oily skin. Personally, it's more of a dry, possibly normal skin kind of product. The next two products I'm getting ready to mention are face products, but before I show you those in greater detail, I wanted to mention the foundation that I used underneath these products so that you're aware of which one I was using to test out that day, and that was the Givenchy foundation, this one specifically. It's one of my most favorite high-end foundations. It never breaks down or falls apart, and that's why I chose it for this wear test specifically. And yes, I will be showing you a wear test at the end with all these products so you can see how the drugstore side holds up to the high-end side. So one of her top-selling products that I have been asked a lot about is the Airbrush Flawless Finish Skin Perfecting Micro Powder. This is a very finely milled powder, extremely soft on the skin, and does give you a beautiful filterized look once you apply it. The closest product I was able to find to match that Charlotte Tilbury product is one from NYX, and that is their No Filter finishing powder. The shade that I'm showing you here is Porcelain, by the way. Now, when you apply these side by side, you can tell that the Charlotte Tilbury powder is much more finely milled, whereas the NYX powder is not. There is a difference in how the skin appears after the initial application, but once you have worn these powders and they've had the time to initialize in the skin, the NYX one starts to look a lot like the Charlotte Tilbury powder. And it wears the same too, which I will show you shortly at the end of this video. The next product I have to share with you is her Filmstar Bronze Glow Face Sculpt and Highlight. So you basically get a sculpting powder and a highlighting powder in a compact. And you can find a dupe for this from the brand W7, and it's next to near identical in packaging and everything else, and that is their Bronze Glow. To apply these to the face, you'll notice that the Charlotte Tilbury side is much lighter by comparison, and W7 side is a little bit more pigmented. Well, I shouldn't say a little bit. It's a lot more pigmented by comparison, so a little bit goes a long way. And that does seem to be a theme when I find drugstore dupes, is that you do get much stronger pigmentation compared to the higher end counterparts, so you actually need less of the drugstore dupe compared to the higher end product. And honestly, that's usually the one factor that gives it away when I show you the initial side-by-side example, because a lot of people are looking to see which side is more pigmented, and usually that will tell you which side the drugstore side is. So excellent quality with the W7 Bronze Glow palette. I was very impressed by that one, and I do feel like if you like the look of the Charlotte Tilbury Sculpt and Glow palette, but you don't want to spend that kind of money, the W7 one will give you the same results at a much more affordable price point. Now, when we're talking about lipsticks, I'm actually working on an entire video right now of Charlotte Tilbury lipstick dupes. That one's going to take a little longer to put together because I'm still in research mode with it, but I was able to find a really excellent dupe for this video, and that is for the Pillow Talk lipstick from Charlotte Tilbury, which is another one of those really popular shades. Now, this lipstick dupe is not exact, but the color is pretty doggone close, and you'll see what I mean here in a second. So the dupe that I'm sharing with you is from Makeup Revolution, and that is their Prime Renaissance lipstick. I mean, if you look at the packaging, that is identical too. Look at that. It's almost like Revolution is trying to dupe the Charlotte Tilbury lipstick. The only difference that you'll find with the dupe compared to the Charlotte Tilbury lipstick is the finish and a slight color variation. So I'm applying them side by side on the lips so you can see what I'm talking about here. The Revolution lipstick has a more shiny finish, not glossy, but it's more satin compared to the Charlotte Tilbury lipstick, which is noticeably more matte. You do get a little bit more pink with the Revolution lipstick compared with Charlotte Tilbury's, but I'm telling you what, if you wanted something that looked a lot like the Pillow Talk lipstick at a much more affordable price point, you can't lose with the Revolution lipstick. It really is such a beautiful shade, and even though the finish is slightly different, I mean, come on, for that price, you can't beat it. So how did all these products wear by the end of the day? Well, that is the true test, I feel like, when it comes to showing you drugstore dupes for higher end products. And this is what my face looked like after 10 hours of straight wear. Now, when I told you that the powders wore for the same exact amount of time, they absolutely do. The Charlotte Tilbury powder is not one that has ever worn well on my oily skin at all. Sad for me to tell you that, but the NYX No Filter powder performed the exact same way, and I do feel like these are dupes of one another. And everything else that I showed you previously held up extremely well. So for the most part, even though some of these dupes are not dead on spot identical to one another, they really fool you into thinking that they are pretty close to Charlotte Tilbury. So like I said, if you don't want to spend all this money on Charlotte Tilbury makeup, you don't have to. A lot of excellent dupes here. And if you're interested in any of the ones that I shared with you here today, I will have all of them listed and linked for you below. Let me know your favorite dupes for some of your high-end products, whether they be Charlotte Tilbury or any other brand. Would love to hear yours as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. I want to wish you a wonderful Mother's Day weekend ahead if you're celebrating with your mom. If you are a mom, even if you're a mom of fur babies, I mean, that counts too. So happy Mother's Day to each and every single one of you. I hope you have a fabulous weekend, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.